Hello, welcome back to Laser Cut and Fly RC Models. I'm the laser model guy, and what I'm going to do in today's video is I'm going to do the second in the series of producing the Classic Keilkraft Gypsy. Now, in the previous video in this series, I produced all the components on Lightburn for the fuselage, and I showed you how I did that, the formers and all the other parts. What I want to do in today's video is produce all of the components on Lightburn for the main wing. Now that's a tapering wing, so you'll see how that taper is made with all of the ribs. And then I want to also produce the parts for the tail plane, and then once they're all produced, I'll be ready to send them off to the laser, and I'm going to be using this laser, which is the Sculpfun S9. So let's get on with that. Okay, so this is the plan of the Gypsy, the full plan, and you can see the wing here, and that's what we're going to be concentrating on today. Now, in the previous video in this series, we produced all the components for the fuselage, and I've got those, or the majority of those are here on this 1/8 balsa sheet layout. So coming away from that, I've got the formers on a sheet that is 3mm ply. Because we're converting to radio control, there'll be a lot of weight inside the aeroplane that was never designed to be in there originally when it was rubber powered, and so these I'm making the main formers for the body out of 3mm ply. So if we go back to the main plan, what we've got is this is the plan, and just to put it into perspective, this square here is the working area for the Sculpfun S9, and I've set it as 400 by 420 millimeters, so it gives you an idea of the size and the scale of the plan that we're working with. Now, one thing to point out is the top of the cabin here, where the wing will sit. You can see that that's flat. Okay, and over here we have a typical wing section, which is the typical wing rib, and you can see that the bottom of that is flat as well. So the wing we're going to be making has got the aerofoil, but with a flat bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this example here to produce the center two ribs, because you can see there's a rib on either wing, and they'll both be set at a slight angle, and then when they're fastened together, that will provide the dihedral for the center of the wing, and that dihedral is shown with this this dotted outline here. So that's the angle that the wing will be at, or be set at, in the center. So what I'll start with is I'll start by just making the outline of this rib, and I'll make it the right size for the centerpiece, and then we'll be able to work with that rib to make the remaining ribs. And bear in mind, these taper down, so unfortunately on this particular model we're going to have to alter every single rib all the way along the entire length of the wing, but I'll show you how we do that. Okay, so to make this first one, I want to use a line tool. I'm not going to trace this rib, because you can see that the outline, when it was originally penned, is very very rough. So rather than just copy the outline of the rib, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my way around it. Just like this. I want to come to the inside on this particular one, because this is going to have the dihedral in it, and then coming around the top, all I'm going to do is click in several places around that shape there. Okay, so that's that. Now I've gone straight across this one, but because we've got a flat surface on the bottom there, I thought it would be quite simple for us to insert that later, so we won't worry too much about that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the layer there so that that's a different colour, so that we can see it against the background of the rib that we've got. If I go to nodes, I can now start to make sure that this shape is absolutely right. So I want that node to be on the outer line. That node is on the outer line. Okay, so if I hover over each of these nodes, because you can see that we don't follow the line properly, so if I hover over this one and press S, you can see that that turns into what's called a smooth curve node, and this corner node here is still set at the original angle pointing straight up. So if I just grab this little tag here, what you can see is I can get that to follow that curve around, and then same with this one. Now if I just grab that and drag it out, that will bring it to the line. Okay, so you can see how we're following that line now on there. So if I come to this side and do exactly the same, create a smooth curve node there, and just bring this tab up a little, convert this one to a smooth curve node, and I think that's round about right. You can see there's a little bit of a wobble on the original drawing here, but I'm not going to alter that because the bottom of our line there is dead straight, dead flat, and the intention on this particular model is that it is flat so that it can sit on the cabin. So what I need to do now is what I want to do now is insert this shape here. So all I'm going to do is hover over the line there and press I, and that will insert a node. Hover over the line here, press I, and so I've now got a node at each corner there. Go anywhere in the middle, press I, and bring that up to there. Anywhere on that line and press I, and bring that one to there. I've now got that cut into the right place. So what I'll do now is I'll bring this across to the main work area for the laser, and we'll carry on working on it. But before I do that, I just want to point out that the end of this rib here it's got a flat end, because what the designer wanted when this was first designed, which was in 1947, he wanted this to be a flat piece sanded down and made into a a rounded leading edge. What you'll find on modern designs now is that this will be a square, and the end will be a point which you can easily sand, and you'll have what's like a bird's mouth in the end of this rib. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bird's mouth into this rib, so that we can accommodate the modern way of doing this by having a piece of square balsa running along the front of the wing. So what I'm going to do is just quickly measure this, and what we'll find is this is 4.86 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the workspace, just like that, And then what I'll do is I'll come off this layer now and I'll make it into our cutting layer, which is 00. Now what I want to do is, instead of having that flat piece on the end of all of the ribs with the rounded leading edge, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a piece of balsa in, which is square in section, and it will be with the point leading forward, and I'll show you what I mean. So if I make a square here, which would represent a piece or cross section of a piece of balsa, and I'm going to make that 4.8 millimeters square. Just by altering these numbers up here, and then that would be representative of like a 3/16 piece of balsa coming right across the front of the aeroplane. Now if I turn that to around 45 degrees, we can now align that and make sure that that's exactly level by going to nodes, going over any of the edge or hover over one of the edges and press A, and that then will make sure that that is now level through those points. Because if you do that, when you go to nodes, hover over one of the edges and press A, it will go to the nearest, either horizontal, vertical, or at 45 degrees, whichever it's nearest to, it will snap to that. So if I then bring that over, and all I want to do is put the point of that into the center of our wing rib there, and then all I'm going to do is go to nodes, back to nodes, and I'm just going to extend this along until it reaches the point there, and then I'm going to just adjust this slightly so it comes down to this point here. And by doing that, what we'll do is we will key in a leading edge, and it will make the whole front end or the whole front edge of the wing much stronger. So with that in mind, if I just hover over, press I, that will insert a node, and I can bring that to that point there. So the bottom will remain flat. On the top, if I insert another node here, and then what we need to do is just bring that to the edge, and then if I just bring these nodes out until we get a nice sensible looking shape, just like that. We just need a little more there. If I hover over both of those, or if I select both of those nodes, both of these, and then press Control and Shift, I can just raise them up slightly until we get a nicer shape there. Let's just take a look at that and see what that looks like. Okay, not too bad. That looks quite nice. So all we've done is we've strengthened this front end up a little bit. We've put we're going to key in our leading edge, and that will make a much stronger wing. And the reason for doing this, of course, is because with us adding our electronics and converting it to radio, it will be a little heavier, so we want to just beef it up a little bit. Okay, so if I go back to nodes, and all I want to do is go into the center, anywhere in the middle, press I to insert a node and bring it back to that point there. Now what we'll be able to do with this now is we'll be able to assemble this and just sand down the front, and that will give us a nice round leading edge. Okay, so the next thing to do with this rib, I'll just remove this. Next thing to do with this rib is to just check these two shapes. Now if we come across and scroll right in, we can see that that is a 3/16 by 1/8 spar, so it's 1/8 across, or 3.2 millimeters across, and it's 3mm or 5.8mm, 4.8mm, sorry, deep. Now these here, D1, so there's one of those either side, they are made of 1/16 balsa. We will make those out of 1/16 ply, just to give us a bit of extra strength in the middle. But we've got a 16th either side, so in essence we've got an 1/8 and a 16th and a 16th, so it's a quarter, which is going to be 6.4mm. So it's 6.4mm across by 4.8mm deep. That's what this shape here is. So what I want to do, you can see just by looking that it's the way it was drawn out and the way we've copied the drawing isn't quite square and as we'd like it. So just make a quick shape, and I want that to be 6.4 wide and 4.8 deep. And then when I bring that down, and center that, so if I press Control and Shift, just want to get these two top corners in alignment here and centered on these two top corners. And if we go back to our nodes, and all I want to do is snap these into place, just like that, and then we know that that is going to fit absolutely perfectly when we make our components up, and it's now nice and square. So this one here is 1/8 balsa, that's spar, 1/8 square. So all we want to do is come back and we'll convert this now to 3.2 by 3.2. Like such, and then we'll bring that down and then place it just as we did before. And all I want to do is get these two bottom corners in alignment with these two bottom corners and in the middle of them. So 1/10 of a millimetre is making a big move there. But right, and so then back to nodes, and all I want to do is snap these nodes onto the corner, and you'll see that that is now a perfect fit. So with that done, we now know that this is perfect for that central rib on the wing. So I just turn that round, and then what I'll do is I'll go to nodes, hover over this one here, and then I'll press A. So that's now upright. What I'll do is I'll just bring this across and we'll just check that it is going to be a good fit. And the way we'll do that is we'll get this bird's mouth here right on that leading edge. And we can see when we do that, that the bottom edge is in alignment with the bottom. Okay, so that's now the correct size and it's all lined up, everything there looks good with that rib. The one thing that I do think we're missing here is that we've got a trailing edge here that's 9/16 by 1/8, and when we look at our rib, if we bring our rib over here and we'll turn it round and we'll just align that in the same way, we'll go to nodes, hover over this bottom line, press A, and now that's perfectly level. The one thing I'm conscious of is that this back edge here is around 4mm high. If you have a look at that, that's 4.09mm. So our trailing edge is going to be 3.2 high, 3.2 high, and close to 15mm long, or 15mm wide. And if we bring that to the back edge, which is where it would be, level with that bottom, and I'll just press Control and Shift and then use my arrow keys to bring that in and get that bottom edge perfectly lined up. You can see that we've got a step here. So bearing in mind that there's going to be the dihedral shape in there as well, but nevertheless we've still got this this step. So what I want to do with that is I want to go to nodes, and I'm going to insert a node right on that corner, and then insert another node. In fact, I could insert one down here, to be fair, and then it just make it a bit easier. Just bring that along until that top shape looks nice and smooth, and then bring that up to there. And then what we'll find is, instead of having a step, the rib will come down and nicely blend onto our trailing edge. And I'll just change that to a smooth curve node, and there we go. So this, of course, the trailing edge will be tapered down as well. We'll either use a stock trailing edge, or we'll sand this corner away. So our rib now is completely finished, and it's also got that little step at the back there, so it'll sit nicely on the trailing edge. So the next thing to do is to start making the rest of the ribs, and the way we're going to do that, or the way I want to do that, is if I make a copy of this one, Control C, Control V, and I'll bring that copy over, and all I'm going to do is turn it upright, and then if I go to nodes, hover over this edge and press A, now I know that that is perfectly vertical. Then I can bring that to where W2 is. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to get this bird's mouth here to be on this inner bottom line here, right in the center of this rib here. So just bring it over, get it reasonably close, and then by pressing Control and the Shift key, I can use the arrow direction keys to just move that 1/10 of a millimeter at a time. I'm now confident that that's in the right place. So all I'm going to do is come down to the bottom now, and I'm going to move this until that is where I think it is in the correct place. And interestingly enough, because the wing tapers both top and bottom, obviously it's come back this way, so this one W2 looks like it'll be in about the right position. So I think that is the right length for this particular rib. So the next thing is, I've got over here, I've got two small shapes. Now one of them is 3.2 by 4.8, which is the cross-sectional size of this top spar, and the other one is 3.2 by 3.2, which is the cross-sectional size of this bottom spar. So all I'm going to do is bring those across, bring that one over, and I'm going to use that as the template in here. And all I want to do is I want to line this particular shape into the center of this spar, level with these two corners here, level with this corner here, or level with these corners, but it may not be touching on some of the later ones, but you'll see what I mean in just a minute. So get it near enough where I want it, and then I'll go to Control and Shift, and then I'll just move that into position. Now I think that's about right where we are there. So you can see that we're in the center of this spar, and we're level with this top edge. So all I'm going to do is go to nodes, and then I'll bring this node to that corner there, this one to that corner, and when you approach the corner they snap into place, and that's all I'm going to do. I now know that that slot will be exactly in line with that spar. So next thing to do is bring the 3.2mm shape over, and then I'm going to do exactly the same with this. I'm going to line it up with the center of this spar, and also try to align it with this edge here. So Control Shift, and then moving it 1/10 of a millimeter at a time. I think that's about the right position there. Okay, so if we go to nodes, and all I'm going to do is move this node to there, to that corner, this node to that corner, and then when we come off nodes, I'll just bring these two shapes out of here, and I'll just park them next to W3 because that's going to be the next one that I do. So I'll just park them there. Okay, so that shape is now complete. So if I just bring that round, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy of that, because that is the copy of this is what I will use for the next rib. So if I Control C, Control V, I've now got an exact copy of that, and now I can label this one up W2. W2. If I come off that and I change that to the engraving layer, which I'm going to use 001 as our engraving layer, so the laser won't cut through that. All it will do is it will write W2 on the component. Then if I group, and then what I can do is I can put my two tabs in. I'll put a tab on the top and a tab on the bottom, and all the tab does is when the laser cuts, it will leave a ½ millimeter gap in the cut, so that the component doesn't fall out of the sheet of balsa while you're cutting, or while you're handling the sheet later on. And I can show you that if we just have a quick look at the preview. If we scroll right in, you can see the little gap there, and then if we move down you can see the little gap at the top there. Okay, so that's the preview, that's what the tabs do. So if I move this across, what I can do, I can also label up the first one. Now the first one is going to be W1, of course. W1. So if I then group W1 and then add in the tabs, just one at the top, one at the top and one at the bottom, and so I've got W1 and W2. So I want to carry on with that process now, but there's one other thing that I wanted to show. We didn't actually resize that one very much, because with the taper and this one being slightly shorter, W1, it meant that when we moved this rib down, it actually matched up quite well at the bottom. But the next one we are going to have to resize. Now, something to just look at is where the dihedral is shown in this dotted line. If you follow that dihedral all the way up to the wingtip, you can see the wingtip is, or the wing itself is tapering not only in its breadth there, but also, or the chord, but it's also tapering in its thickness. So what we need to do as we shrink these ribs down to make the next ribs is we need to make sure that we're taking something from the thickness as well as from the length. So if we move this one, if we do exactly the same thing with this rib here, and I'll tip it on its side, I'll go to nodes, I'll hover over and I'll press A so that it's perfectly vertical. And then all I'm going to do with this is move it into position over W3 in exactly the same way as we have done with the others. So I'll just, if you just press Control and your arrow keys, by the way, it will move 1 millimeter at a time. So if you've got a way to go, you know, that is a good way to do it. So I'll just come a little bit closer in so that we can see exactly where we are, and I want that V to be right on, and I'm happy with that. Now if we come to the bottom, what we'll find is we're now over, so I want this edge here to be level with the edge in the center of the edge of this trailing edge here, because I don't intend to cut slots in the trailing edge. I'm going to use our little lip there as a means of keying in, so to speak. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of these corner markers here and get the arrows to go diagonal, and what this means is that when I move that, drag that inwards, it will reduce the size of this rib, but it will reduce it proportionally. So the length will get shorter, but also the thickness will get shorter as well. So all I'm going to do is bring that in until that point there is level with this trailing edge, and I think that's about right there. And then what I can do is I can now bring our shape in, and I'm going to put that exactly where the last one was. So if I get to the center of the spar, and then level with this edge, and then all I need to do is click on our rib, go to nodes, and just shift those two nodes there up, just like that, and then move these until they snap in. Just like that. And I now know that that cut-in is exactly in line with that spar, with this spar here. So I can just shift that shape out, and all I'm going to do is park that next to W4, just the same as we did before. And then I can bring this shape in, and all I want to do is get it into the center of these two lines for the spar and level with this top edge here. So if I press Control and Shift, I can just move that along. And the thing to bear in mind, you can see there that we are fractionally over the edge there, over the top of the rib, and if we move 1/10 of a millimeter in, we are inside the rib. So you can't always get it spot on, but what you've got to bear in mind is we're now talking about 1/2 of a millimetre, or 5/100ths of a millimetre. So if we just go, I think that is closer than the other side. So all I'm going to do now is go to nodes and just snap this onto the corners just like that. And I know now that that rib, or that spar, will fit perfectly into that rib. So I'll just move this shape and I'll park it next to W4. Okay, now I'm going to carry on that process until I make all of these ribs, and using the corner to shrink it proportionally. What we'll do when we end up at this last rib here, W10, is we will end up with a rib that is this size but proportionally thinner than this rib up here. So we'll get this nice taper that we've got on these dotted lines here. And once I've done that, I won't go through the whole process now and show you that. What I'll do is I'll quickly make those up and I'll show you them all in line, and then we'll concentrate on this final rib here, which is at an angle. Okay, I'll show you that in just a minute. Okay, so that's all of the ribs made up. We've just got this last one to do. So all we'll do is more or less the same, except this time we're going to have to turn this so that it matches the angle of that rib at the end, in order to make sure that we're going to get our length exactly right. So all I'm going to do is move that into position, and we now have to just shorten this by very small amount. There we go. We can now bring our shape over and line that up. Now what I want to do with this shape is I want to get the top of this in the centre of the spar. And I want to get the edge of this aligned at the same angle as the original. So I think if we use that as our template, I think we'll be in exactly the right place. So I'll go to nodes. All I'm going to do is shift those nodes to the corner of the shape, and I think we'll be absolutely fine right there. And in exactly the same way, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this rib until the slot at the bottom is over where the rib would be. I'm going to turn this so that it's at the same angle as the original slot was. There we are. And now if I get this end so that it's on the centre of the rib, or on the centre of this spar, I'm sure that that will be absolutely spot on. I think that's where we want it, about there. Okay. So go to nodes, and all I'm going to do is move these nodes to the corners in exactly the same way as we have been doing I think that's our final rib completed. So if I bring that out of there, bring these two shapes down as well, move them out the way. In fact, we're finished with those now, so they can go. And this is our W11. So with that labelled up and in place here, all I need to do now is copy all of those, Control C, then Control V, and that's all of the ribs made for both wings. Okay, so with all of the ribs made for both wings now, the next thing to do is produce these wing tips. Now I'm going to make these in 3/16 balsa, and they'll be sanded down to this profile here. So very straightforward. All I'm going to do is use the line tool, and I'm going to start up here, and I'll go to the this outside line, start there, come all the way down, and then all I'm going to do is move along, click in a number of places, and then we'll convert those to smooth curved nodes and we'll get a perfect shape. And then if I zoom right in so I can get right on that end, and then when you left click, that finishes the shape. What I'll do is I'll just change that to layer number 2 so it comes out red so you can actually see what I'm doing. Now if I go to nodes, there's a few minor adjustments to make. This is not quite in line with the edge of the wingtip, so if I just move that node back, that snaps into place, and then if I go to the bottom, just check that that's in the right place. Yep, that one's fine. So if I just hover on these, click on it, hover over it and press S, that will turn that into a smooth curved node. Now the bottom one here, we always need to adjust this one because the bottom one here is still a corner node. So while the smooth curved node has followed more or less the path we want it to take, this one here we'll just have to grab this tag and bring it out a little until the dotted line follows where we want it to go, just like that. Okay, so just click on the rest, convert them to smooth curved nodes, and you'll see how they snap into place and then just seem to naturally follow the line around. Just like that, and we end up with this perfect shape. But there we go. Just convert that one, and I think that's going to be a very good shape. Let's have a little look. Perfect. Okay, so I just need 2 of those. So I'll just level that up. I'll just go to nodes, go onto that bottom line, press A, and that's now perfectly horizontal. So if I convert that to our cut-in layer and then produce a copy, Control C, Control V, so I've now got 2 of those. I could have labelled them up first actually. We'll just call them WT. Although I'm certain we'll all know that they are the wingtips, but there you go. Right, so just convert that to the engraving layer. Group, group, and I'll move those to a different sheet so that they're on the 3/16 balsa. I'll just put a couple of tabs in. And there we go. So that's the wing tips. And now the last thing that I want to do on this video is produce these dihedrals. So I'm going to produce those now, and I'll show you how I do that. And then I'll be sending those to 1/16 ply rather than balsa. I just want to strengthen up this centre section slightly. So all I'm going to do with these, now these ones, remember, are 3/16 by 1/8 or 3/16 by 1/16. So I'm going to make those 4.8 millimeters deep and 1/16 or 1.6 millimeters wide. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a shape. I'll extend it to here, to be fair. I won't stop them there. I'll bring it to here. So I want a shape that is that size, and that wants to be 4.8 millimeters high. So 4.8. Okay. Now what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to bring that down here, and I'm going to rotate that until I get that angle correct, until that angle matches this line, just like that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, Control C and then Control V to produce a copy, and I'm going to flip that round. Move that right on so that it's identically positioned to the one on the other side. So I think that's positioned correctly. So if I just Control and grab the other one as well, then what I can do is I can bring that into a nice little space just here, and then I can grab my snipping tool and just snip away the bits that we don't need, and I've now got perfectly shaped dihedral for the center part there. What I'll do with that is I'll move that over to our workspace, and I will convert that to a cut-in layer. Now I'm not going to engrave on this because I don't want to weaken this in any way. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to put D1 right above it there, no, right at the end there, I think. And then what I'll be able to do is just change that to our engraving layer, and then I can group that, and then copy and paste. And then what I'll do, I've now got my two D1s, and I can put those both onto a sheet of 1.6 millimeter ply. Okay, so that's the D1, but we've now got our D2 to make, and I'm going to make that in exactly the same way as I've just made the D1, so no need to show that. What I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to produce this tail plane here, and I'm going to save that for a complete video on its own because I'll be cutting in our elevator as well at the same time. So that's what I'll be doing next time. Thanks for watching. Look forward to seeing you all next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.